welcome to Walk in the Park. My name is Tony Ingram, and this is June 21st, 2017. Happy summer. We are here. If you want to see all of our shows, go to my video blog, walkinthepark.tv, walkinthepark.tv. That's the URL. Walk in the Park is a public access TV series in Ithaca, New York. If you want to see all of the shows and their schedules and more information or become a producer yourself, go to this website, pegasus.webstarts.com, and you can learn a lot more. And then you can call the station. They have trainings every month for both our studio and our they call portable classes, where you take cameras out and make shows like the one I'm going to show you now. This is we're going to go to the Finger Lakes Land Trust. Has its annual meeting on something called Sheffield Farm on West Hill in Tompkins County, and so we're going to learn an update about what has been going on for the past year and what's coming up from the president of the Finger Lakes Land Trust and the executive director. So it's going to take up just about all the shows, so let's go right to it.
My name is Holly Gregg. I'm the president of the board of directors of the Finger Lakes Land Trust, and I've been sort of in this role for 2 years now. It's been 2 years? Wow. It feels like it's been about 2 days. Things are moving really quickly with this organization. I've volunteered on a lot of different organizations in my life, and I've never been part of a better run organization than the Finger Lakes Land Trust. It's absolutely a spectacular operation. We have a spectacular, some of the staff people are here. Please close your ears. The staff at Finger Lakes Land Trust is among the best I've ever worked with. They're consummate professionals. They know what they're doing. They're totally engaged. They're totally passionate. It's just a treat to hang out with them. I don't consider myself as like you guys are all such passionate naturalists. I'm just a sort of a preservationist. I just want to make sure that we keep the Finger Lakes as pure as we can. And that's what I love about being part of this organization, is to keep it as it is and to protect it and to conserve it. But it's so fun to walk around the different the preservation and conservation areas that we have with staff members and board members who really know what's going on, and they can point to a tree and tell you what it is. They can point to a bird and tell you what it is, and it's just like, wow, this is just a beautiful thing. So this is a no kid around operation. I thank you for supporting it so much. I can see there are a lot of great supporters here. I also want to thank Jan and Sue Sawinski, who are hosting us here today. Can we have a round of applause? And it's just an absolute pleasure to have you on the board and to have your input. I really do appreciate it so much. And he also has this incredible piece of land, which he has just made a donation to the Finger Lakes Land Trust, which is just the most amazing thing. Are we talking about, when this is all said and done, we're talking about 330 acres, somewhere like that will be available to the community?
Well, the total is 470.
Total of 470 acres.
And 330 contiguous here will be a nature preserve for the Land Trust.
330 will be contiguous here, and it will be a nature center for the Finger Lakes Land Trust. So,
I want to talk about conservation easements. It's such a wonderful opportunity because I can show you some wonderful easement properties that are probably not quite as conducive to hosting this meeting, but one, we're here on this easement property that is just perfectly suited for it. And as we're here, I can thank Betsy and Dick Darlington for the donors of the first conservation easement at Logan Hill. And Richard Page over here, donors of our last conservation easement, which probably hasn't been in the papers yet as of week and a half, 2 weeks. A beautiful property bordering Tagana Creek over the town of Hector. Fields, forests, wetlands, great wildlife habitat. So thank you so much, Richard. And then if they stick around, the wards are scheduled to donate an easement on Monday on a beautiful farm up in southeastern Onondaga County. So a rare occasion. So thank you. had a terrific year. In the past, since the last annual meeting when we convened, we protected 1,700 acres of beautiful farmland, wildlife habitat, wetlands, all sorts of things, and I'll talk a bit about that. And most importantly, we passed in aggregate 20,000 acres of conserved land. So, and this is because of the sustained effort over decades now, and not just acquiring legal interest, but you're going to hear me talk more today about stewardship, because you kind of notice when you have legal interest in 20,000 acres, a lot of things happen. There's a lot of work going on. So one thing moving forward, you're going to hear more and more about our land stewardship programs that involve managing habitat, trying to manage invasive species where it's an effort. I won't say that we're actually managing. But then what's really the most ambitious is trying to manage humans. That's the real hard part. And you'll be hearing a lot more about that. Before going on though, I want to ask our staff to raise their hands. They're sprinkled around the back. They're edging toward the cars right now. They're running. Before I came back to Ithaca, I worked for the Land Trust Alliance, which is the National Association of Land Trusts. And I went all over the country and saw all sorts of land trust organizations, all sorts of staff. I can tell you there is no more dedicated, effective group than these folks. So thank you every day for what you guys put in. We completed in the past year 8 conservation easements, a conservation easement amendment that protected additional land, where over in Sugar Hill, if you know where that is, west of Watkins Glen, the Trechter family bought more land to conserve it and added it to the easement. We acquired 3 additions to preserve lands, including a new nature preserve on the Chemung River. And we added 4 parcels to public conservation lands, including land added to Connecticut Hill, our state's largest wildlife management area, the Owasco Flats, Bear Hill overlooking Canandaigua Lake, and High Tor Wildlife Area, an important bird area at the south end of Canandaigua Lake. So we had a terrific year in terms of protection. I'm not going to go through one by one and detail all these. They all come to you in the newsletter and the e-news, but I do want to single out a couple projects. One is in Canandaigua, we were able to protect 600 acres of prime farmland through a partnership with the town of Canandaigua and the state of New York, where if you ever drive from Canandaigua to Rochester, there's a road called State Route 332 that once having lived in Canandaigua, I can tell you that each year there's a new car dealership or an Arby's or a Wendy's being built on some of the best farmland in the Northeast. And fortunately, through a state and town funding, we were able to buy the very valuable development rights on 600 acres bordering State Route 332. If you drive that road, it's the last major farm, and that will stay that way now because of this effort. It took years of effort. I can tell you that it is not a user-friendly process. And even better news is that last year, we got a commitment from the town and the state to protect 700 more acres next to that. So, and there's a commitment to protecting not just 1 or 2 farms, but a block of farmland in what is rapidly becoming a suburban community. So that's a huge project we accomplished. And down on the in the southern tier, we received a wonderful gift between Elmira and Corning of the Kehoe Nature Preserve, that if you were to go down there today, you can still see the sign for the development that was going to be built there. And the one silver lining to the economic bust of the early 90s is this woodland, about 40 acres with several thousand feet on the Chemung, is not one more cul-de-sac. The family was actually in the development business, and they, over time though, they became quite attached, and we're honored that they donated this land that is now a preserve on the river. We went down on a field trip recently, and we're standing looking at the river, and bald eagles swoop by almost to roost right near us, so regularly seen in that part of the river. A wonderful new addition to our preserve system. And last year, some of you may recall, the Houghton family gave us a 200-acre preserve down in Corning. And staff and volunteers are now working weekly to put in the trail system, put in a parking area and an interpretive kiosk, and that will be dedicated this coming October. And we're also exploring the possibility of a half-mile connector trail to the sidewalk system of downtown Corning. And if negotiations go well, it'll be our first preserve that is actually connected and walkable from downtown. We talked about where we are today, and because of the vision of Jan and Sue that started more than 40 years ago, and a little additional good luck that you may notice you drove past a YMCA environmental ed facility, some of you, and Eco Village planned community next door. We actually hold a conservation easement on 60 acres there. If you were to walk south, you would come to a place called Coy Glen, and Cornell Botanic Gardens owns acreage there as a natural area. If you skip a property, you then would be on town conservation land. We've helped the town of Ithaca acquire about 100 acres over the past few years, and that would take you to Bostwick Road. And if you look at Google Earth, from Bostwick Road to Treman Park, it's a real ridgy, wild area. So we're now working with particularly the town of Ithaca, Cornell, and others to see, as Ithaca grows and develops, how can we create a West Hill Wildway all the way from Bundy Road in the north to Robert Treman Park. And as part of that too, looking at how to connect to the city. So between here and the downtown Ithaca, there's a large farm field that's actually owned by someone who has some development interests. And that may not stay a farm field, but we're already working with the city and town to say, okay, if it does develop, how do we buffer Sheffield Farm where we are, and how do we create corridors to connect to downtown so someone, again, can walk from downtown Ithaca to this system we're creating. So those are the kind of projects where we're just really taking the torch from folks like Jan and Sue and Betsy and Dick Darlington, and over years and decades of being focused and protecting not just parcels of land, but also networks of conserved land. Looking forward, we're focused on many different projects across the region. Again, a lot of what we try to do is not annoy landowners, but as they are in any of 12 counties not thinking about their own mortality, their financial plans, to be there at that moment when they realize they're not going to live to be 500 years old. And to try to be there, because what happens is a lot of children move away. They could be in New Jersey or California, and sometimes it's just the land becomes an asset, and if it's got road frontage, it gets chopped up. So a lot of what we're trying to do is position ourselves to be there at the right time to come up with these conservation solutions. And as we work on these individual projects, we're aware, though, of the magnitude of the region, of the challenges, and that's why we produced this regional conservation agenda. There are copies on the table back there if you haven't seen it. And this was also with an eye towards fundraising, and particularly the public sector. We do a lot of good partnership work, particularly with the state of New York. But the New York State's been very generous. But if you read the papers, you'll notice a lot of the conservation funding goes from Long Island to the Hudson Valley to the Adirondacks. And if you're ever in Albany talking to someone who is not a resident of here, they say, yeah, the Finger Lakes. That's like west of the Catskills, right? And they're very intrigued, but I can tell you that conservation organizations in the Adirondacks, in the Hudson Valley, in Long Island are quite competent, they're quite good, and they've been at it longer. They bring town supervisors only an hour away from Albany, and they're very effective. So we did this with an eye toward, in areas like Canandaigua, if we don't conserve it now, it's gone. Same with areas close around Ithaca. We're kind of in an end game because of just enough pressure on those lands. At the same time, 5 of 11 Finger Lakes have experienced toxic algae outbreaks. There's huge concern that, particularly with the warming climate, our wonderful lakes are at risk, both for enjoying them, but also for human drinking water supplies. There's a particular concern at Owasco Lake, where last year it had the first recorded incidence of the toxins in treated drinking water after treatment. So as you might imagine, this and a few other things got Albany's attention on water quality. But the success of this is not only did the state commit to $2.5 billion towards water quality efforts, most of which is for upgrading water treatment systems, sewage systems, and so on. But what the difference this was able to make by working with other groups like the Nature Conservancy, in there is $100 million for source water protection or land conservation to serve water. That is a first time ever investment, and we're now scrambling to take advantage of that. So that is a case where as we work on these individual projects, we're also looking at how we can change what is possible by bringing in additional resources. And part of that too is looking at members. Thanks to all of you and others, we're up to about, Kelly, about 2,400?
Yeah.
We have 2,400 members, which is terrific. But then if you look at 12 counties, and if you really want to protect Lakeshore, what little is left, it's a rather daunting proposition on 11 Finger Lakes, where I can tell you in Canandaigua, the price of land is doing this. I mean, it's just incredibly expensive. So when we look at that, and then we look at the stewardship, which I'll talk more about, of the huge costs of in perpetuity taking care of this, we are focused on how do we grow. And one thing we've kind of noticed that you have too probably, the outlook for local print newspapers is a little dubious. And it's unfortunate for us because we have done quite well at placing our stories in local papers, but they're dwindling away. At the same time, as we help the state of New York add to its portfolio, places like Connecticut Hill, we are aware that many people were unfamiliar with these sites and the information available wasn't that great. So we're in a tourism region with a $2 billion tourism economy. If you go on the DEC website, you can find some information, but it's pretty static, it's not updated, it's not the best. So we talked at length with the tourism industry and decided at their urging to create GoFingerLakes.org, both to provide a service that's simply, where do I go? Where are the best places to get outside? But with a real ulterior motive is, one, to build a stronger constituency for conservation, and then also to connect with the public without having to rely on old-fashioned direct mail or the local papers, which the future is uncertain. So this is a huge effort, and I want to recognize Kelly McCosh in back, our Director of Development and Communications. And before wrapping up, I do want to talk about stewardship, and that we have a great crew and so many dedicated volunteers. I want to thank Roger Hopkins in particular, who is a longtime stewardship volunteer, who along with Tom Reimers, who I also want to thank, has helped knit us together with the Finger Lakes Trail Conference, the Cayugas Trails Club, and that the best example of that partnership is this year when we acquired a mile of the Finger Lakes Trail in Danby, where we purchased 144 acres that'll be added to Danby State Forest, and we were able to do that by getting a loan from the Finger Lakes Trail Conference. And we now own the land. In 2 years, hopefully, we'll sell to the state and then roll that money back over. And we're already negotiating and have under contract 50 more acres. This is between actually Route 96B and Coddington Road. So it's the ridge, kind of the very eastern end of the forest. We're now negotiating for 50 acres that would connect it to Coddington Road. And we're working with the Trail Conference. The next jump is connecting Danby State Forest and Shindagan. So part of the Emerald Necklace that we're brick by brick assembling, but we couldn't possibly do it without particularly folks like Tom and Roger and also the Trail Conference. So thank you. So as we are taking on all of this, poor Chris and Jason, Chris Olney and Jason Gorman, are the best sports of all because we keep throwing stuff at them and they somehow rise to the occasion with their dedicated volunteers. And just to give you a sense of the range of activities, it includes, if you're on your way to Geneva, you should stop, and we have a little preserve called the Bishop Preserve right before you get to routes 5 and 20. And it connects to the Seneca-Cayuga Canal and what's emerging Cayuga-Seneca rail trail that ultimately will go from Geneva to Montezuma. Well, if the first 4 miles exist, and because it's flat as a pancake, and our Bishop Preserve is young woods that was farmland, had wide paths, we made it our only preserve that's bike accessible. And until they get to Geneva, it really is the best access point for a nice walking or biking trail up on Geneva. And that was all under their oversight, contractors, contracts, professionally done interpretation. Now that's moving on to the Houghton Preserve in Corning that we hope to dedicate in October. Otisco Lake, where we have a new preserve with additional shoreline there. And as they're doing all that, they're also monitoring dozens of lands we own and invite the public on, now 140 conservation easements, and dealing with the ultimate threat to our society, conservation, everything, unleashed dogs. But this is not a small issue. This is the future, because I myself am both a dog owner and been bitten by an unleashed dog. It's human management. As Ithaca is not so small as Canandaigua, usage grows, people ignore the rules, people tear down the rules. One of the most challenging things for us in the future is going to be dealing with volumes of use, dealing, say, on Jan and Sue, I think I've had terrific luck with the neighbors, but time passes, someone always knows a story about a bad neighbor. Well, we're an absentee owner, so it's the stewardship team that on lands we own has to kind of referee the public, go after the bad actors, stay in touch with the neighbors, and then on the easement properties too. So that's why this terrific special gift that was made in honor of Betsy is so important, and I hope you'll all consider giving to that campaign that's going to be underway. But to let you know too, though, that's just a starting point. We have a long ways to go with growing that endowment, because we don't intend to slow down the protection part. So you're going to be seeing a lot more about how do we create an institution that will live far beyond our lifetimes or our children or grandchildren's lifetime. And thanks to you all who've given it such a strong foundation. In wrapping up, I just want to mention two things. Back to the lakes, the most threatened resource. Some good news, hopefully. We're negotiating right now for land acquisitions on Skaneateles Lake. 900 feet of shoreline that's contiguous to 2,300 feet. We already own near the south end, so we hope to be reporting on that. Owasco Lake, we're negotiating for 1,100 feet of shoreline that would be a new preserve. That would be a great place to visit. A lake, by the way, Owasco only has 2 public access points. Emerson Park in Auburn, which is a lot like Stewart Park, so very manicured mode. And then the canoe put in at the Owasco Flats, think dirt roads, scruffy, wet. That's it. There is no other access on that lake. So on one hand, we'll preserve 1,100 feet of habitat. We'll also provide just a spot for someone to just go in and go out and look at the lake. So that's happening. And then, while the Finger Lakes Land Trust is not going to solve the water quality problems of the Finger Lakes, we know we need to play a role. We work very closely with the lake associations, but they all have very limited capacity. We have 11 lake associations. Some have 0 paid staff, some have a half. And one of the issues we're working on coming out of this conservation agenda is, one of the problems is we have a lot of nutrient and sediment loading of the lakes. And a part of this is the result of 120 years of well-intentioned tinkering, where probably this property we're on, it's very wet in the spring, farmers want to get their crops in. A way to address that is put in what's called a tile drain and just get that water off quicker. Usually in the Finger Lakes that hits a road ditch, and the road doesn't want either. So there's a highway crew for the last 100 years figuring out the ditches to get the water moving a little faster. So this has gone for generation to generation. We've created the perfect system to get water in the lakes quick, bringing nutrients and sediment. So we have to re-engineer region-wide. How do we slow that down? Because if you're driving up Route 13 toward the mall and just look after a rainstorm, you can see the result. It's a plume of sediment that brings nitrogen and phosphorus into the lake that settles down. And if we have a hot summer and it's not much wind, toxic algae. Cayuga hasn't had it yet, but it could be, it's just a matter of time, because those same issues are in every lake. What we think part of the answer, a good part, is not in just one location, but to find those spots, say an acre, where there probably was once a wetland, to route all that runoff into a wetland, let it settle there, create some wildlife habitat, put it back in the ditch, but to create these settling areas that used to happen and put it back in the landscape and all over the Finger Lakes. So we're going to start with pilot projects and then look to see towns like Canandaigua, we're already doing some of this, but work with a lot of partners. The other thing is, thanks to the state, we now have funds for the first time to pay for permanent easements on sensitive areas. So there are federal programs for farmers to retire sensitive areas, but they're term programs, and typically what you do is crop price is low, enter the program. Crop price is high, plow it back up. So we're fighting the same battles over and over. We're now looking to see at areas like along the Owasco Inlet, could we just buy buffers and shrink the footprint of what is really large-scale agriculture in the northern Finger Lakes. So that, again, not looking to do alone, but working with partners. So that'll be a whole new area for us, and it's an experiment. We're not going to do it all, but we're going to see, can we see if this works, because otherwise we know we're going to have sick lakes. So that is what's going on. I want to thank you all. I want to just see if there are any questions I'm happy to address before we go back to the ice cream time.
No question, but I just want you to know that there's a volunteer crew from the Finger Lake, from the Cayuga Trails Club that's out today, now working on that section of Finger Lakes Trail to improve it.
Oh, that's terrific. Oh, good.
Andy, did anybody thank you for what you do?
Well, thank you all, and stick around.
Okay, so as that last note said there, you can go to fllt.org to get any more information, including the Regional Conservation Agenda publication that Andy just briefly showed. You can go on the website and download that as well. There's a lot of interesting information in there. This was the Finger Lakes Land Trust annual meeting, which was held on Sheffield Farm on Saturday, June 17th. I want to thank Bill Hecht, who for most of the aerial photography and videography that was in this. Well, that's all that we have time for this week. So thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again soon.